Good afternoon, and you're joining me on a sunny Friday afternoon in Leeds, just before a bank holiday Monday. And I'm really pleased and very grateful to have the wonderful Matt Giggs joining me today on the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. So, Matt, let's jump straight in. If you could give everyone a quick introduction to you and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Sam. It's actually, I met you probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago now, at one of the events that I put on. One of my moments of madness, really, if I'm being honest. I thought I'd do an event, and it was actually a really good day, and it was the first time that I really come into contact with yourself. So thanks for having us on. I have a group of estate agencies and mortgage services, letting agencies called the Giggs Group, and each business is built by myself and a co-director. And the co-directors are at the forefront driving the businesses, making sure that it's got their values, their vision, and their team in place. And I help them to facilitate that through my journey of 10 years coming up, just about to be my 10-year anniversary of my first business. And, it's been really, really fun, really, really fun in terms of helping other people to kind of do what I've done. I mentor agents. I've done that. I've trained agents across the country for 20 years, probably more so in the last 10. I'm a bit of an estate agency kind of like lover, if you like, but it's more to do with people. The industry's great. The property side's fine, but my bit is really about people. And that's the bit that I'm passionate about.
That's good. So when I started Watson Co in 2017, I made the decision to try and get more active on social media.
Yeah.
I think it was LinkedIn where I came across you originally, and started following you, and then you put the event on, which I'll ask you about actually, because it was a big event, and it'd be interesting to hear it from the other side.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
went into doing that. So I started following Matt because of just the way he comes across and the way he talks about the industry. I really, really connected with. So what would be interesting to find out then is, before you started the first Gigs and Co estate agency business,
Yeah.
you worked in corporate agency. So if you can give us a little bit of a timeline of how you rose through the ranks and where you got to.
Yeah, 100%. So I started in estate agency at the age of 19, and I was a trainee, didn't drive, had to learn to drive and get my test passed, so I could get a full-time contract. And so my basic could go from 6,000 to 8,000, which was quite cool back then. Worked my way through the ranks in estate agency, mainly in Countrywide and for a brand called Taylor's Estate Agents. Had loads of fun. Worked for an independent for 2 years, right at the start of my career, probably about 8 or 9 months into starting at Taylor's. I went there because I was promised some football time, didn't get the football time because I was selling a lot of properties, and it became more about, what I realized back then, it became more about estate agency than football. I think I realized at that point when my career was probably on the way down, whilst my career in the business world was on the way up. And worked my way through negotiator, assistant manager, senior manager, area manager, director, and just got to a point probably in about 2009, 2010, where I realized that perhaps being a director in that environment didn't really mean anything as such. I suppose what you were there, you was passing down messages all the time and given very little autonomy. And I completely understand why that was the case. Looking back, I don't resent or regret anything that went on back then. But I certainly learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the fact that if you've done a state agency a certain way, it works better than doing it a way which is about manipulation and trying to get customers to sign up to things that really aren't going to benefit them, and so on and so forth. But that was my personal experience back then. So it got to a place where in 2011 I went to a friend and I said, look mate, I want to get out of my corporate job. I've got no cash spare. Basically whatever came in was going out. Big mortgage, my first child, and but I was really miserable because I just felt like I wasn't doing the job the way I wanted to do it. And it really cut quite deep actually on quite a number of occasions, because it felt like I was trying to be someone that I wasn't. And that's a pretty bad place to be in, because you feel stretched and stressed a lot of the time instead of inspired and motivated. And this friend of mine was lucky enough to, well, not lucky enough, he saw enough in me to say, look, let's go and do it, man. Just, I'll lend you the money. What do you need? He said, I'll lend you up to 120,000 in the first 4 years. I borrowed 65,000, paid him back 90,000 in year one, and became the sole director of the business, if you like, with my wife. We became the sole directors of the business. We took him off of the company's house after 1 year. He was quite happy. He had made a nice profit, and that was the beginning of Gigs and Co. And we got to market leader in 3 months, and we've been there ever since. And it's just been a catalogue of learning. I could quite easily paint some lovely big pictures for everybody and say it's been a piece of piss, and it really hasn't. It's been soul destroying at times. It's been relentless. It's been stressful, overwhelming. But what I realized is when I was starting this journey is that I'd carried my corporate hat into my own business and realized that I was starting the process of my own business like I was finishing. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to really start to figure out what was important to me. And probably another 4 or 5 years after that to realize that those are the things that I need in my business. So I'm probably 10 years in and only really at the point of saying to anyone that this is probably the best it's ever been. These aren't the best results we've ever had. You know, our market share is not as high as it was 10 years ago and all of those different things, but we've just got something that I would consider to be that fits the vision that I started with, if you like. And you have to go through these ups and downs, the sleepless nights, the treading the floorboards, all that kind of stuff to get there. But it's been bloody successful. I won't lie. You know, we've got 8 companies, lots of different exciting projects on the go. And I've gone from being a 17-stone warrior to being, you know, a happy kind of, you know, fairly motivated, as you probably know, individual with a load of people that feels equally passionate about what we do. So it's been a good journey. Hopefully that summarizes it nicely.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, obviously the podcast is called The Evolution of a Property Business, and I like to focus on the sort of story, you know, like the start, the middle, the end, and how it can, you know, how it can change. So one question I wanted to ask you, which might be something that the listeners who are considering a career in estate agency, and especially those who are probably a bit younger, is, you know, I think, did you have a bit of a background with football? Were you potentially looking at becoming a...
Yeah. I was going to say West Ham then. That's my team I support. But I was at Peterborough United for a few years and apprentice playing reserve team football when they were in the what's equivalent to the Championship now. And my impatience, probably one of my downfalls, but probably can be an upside, is I'm quite impatient. And it was that impatience, if you like, that made me go to the gaffer in, I think it was like February or March time, and say to him, look, I'm being offered a deal. I was offered a deal by Rushden and Diamonds, but I wasn't. I was just told by a scout that they'd get me a deal, and it never materialized. And he said, well, look, I think you're better off going. You know, we're not giving contracts out till May. And he made it pretty clear that I probably wasn't going to get one. So at that point, I thought, well, I'm out the door. My friends are earning money working in labouring. I could work in labouring and go and play football for a living. And that was the end of my football career. But about a year later, I found a estate agency through my mum. She saw an advert in the paper and said, go and apply. And I did, and managed to start my career in estate agency.
So as a young man then, starting out in the estate agency, what was it that you loved the most? What did you fall in love with?
Well, I'll never forget the feeling of selling my first house. And what I realized, and I was lucky, I think I started with a good manager and a guy that, yes, he was a salesperson, he had results to achieve, but he made it a pretty good environment to work in. And he made me understand that actually the job of a estate agency is about getting on with your customers and building a relationship. And that fundamentally was what I did. And that was the best bit. You know, I've still got customers today that I work with in the town that were from my very, very early years, 26, 27 years ago in a estate agency.
Yeah.
So that's the bit that I latched onto.
The sort of people in the relationship. And I think I'm not an estate agent. I'll make that pretty clear. I'm a letting agent. I think that's just because I've got more of a systematic brain than, you know, you stick me in front of a spreadsheet in a dark room all day and I'm happy.
See, that's my ultimate nightmare, right? But I get it. You know, you've got to do things that you enjoy. And I think what I loved was going out or registering, meeting,
Yeah,
and trying to really understand what somebody really needed. And the bit that I done very early on, and I kept doing to the behest of probably the environment that I was in, where it was over the years ahead, it was about how many phone calls you can make. That weren't of interest to me. Mine was about making sure that I understood and delivered.
yeah.
And that's not changed. That's the fundamentals of building trust with someone, is that if you coach someone or you mentor someone, there's no point you blazing them away with stuff that they don't need. It's understand what they do need to help them out. And it's the same in a estate agency.
Yeah, and I think a lot estate agents get a bad rap sometimes and a bad rap, but really, in a lot of places, the estate agents are almost a bedrock of the community. And
Yeah.
if you get to know the local people, then you become the agent, and it makes it easier. So you've gone from a career in estate agency as an estate agent under the umbrella of a corporate with all the sort of security and the
Mm.
protection, and then you've jumped in and set your own business up, and the world's changed. So what would you say when you first set up the business? And from what you were saying before, your results for the first year were outstanding. What was your biggest challenges? Because you say you've had a lot of ups and downs, so it'd be interesting
Yeah, yeah. I think
challenges.
it was like having a baby, right? It's got my name on it. It was in my hometown. Um, and it was all consuming. It was all consuming. I threw myself into, I was answering the phone on Sunday evenings. I was answering the phone on Saturday nights, tying up deals. And we just had our second child after year one. And, you had all of that going on, and you're trying to throw everything into your career. So I probably prioritized work in the first, and certainly in the early 3, 4, 5 years. And that can put a strain on your relationships outside of work. And I think that was probably one of my biggest challenges. But actually, when I look back, starting a business, I wasn't particularly organized. I wasn't very savvy to running a business. I've never done it before. Managing in a corporate sector and a corporate world is very different to having your own business and understanding. I put a post in my power group recently about the fact that your HR, your therapist, you've got to understand how to do this, do that. You got a list of about 15, 16 different things, and then you can go out and be an estate agent. And what I realized very soon is that I needed people around me that could facilitate some of the things that I weren't so good at, in order for me to, the only way we were going to build the business was as if I was in front of people. Because like I said, I needed someone who was good with the spreadsheets and accounts. I needed someone who was really, really good at following up and feedback and doing the viewings. Somebody who could put the details together, somebody who could measure up. It was really essential that in the first, this is why I'm building the businesses the way I am now, where we get the teams in at the start, not too big, but big enough to be able to facilitate the growth of each person in that team to make sure that they add value together. And I think that was my big lesson. And the challenges are that you wear your heart on your sleeve. It's your brand, it's your business. It's, like I said, you just put everything and anything you've got into it, and it can tire you out quite fast if you don't look after yourself.
Take it personally when you don't win a valuation and someone else gets it. And
Oh yeah, I mean, I used to, I feel, that side of it I was good at. I was confident, but there were times where I'd walk out, the old classic, yeah, we're going to use you, thanks very much. And 3 weeks later, you see it online with somebody else or whatever else. And when you're a people person, that's the sort of stuff that kicks you in the teeth. But I've learned a very different way of managing that sort of stuff now through the team to help them to get better at what they do. But I look back at those times and those experiences and that mindset from the start, and I can see kind of how far I've come, if you like. But it is a mental shift. It's the mental shift you've got to continually work on. If you're going to shift anything or grow anything, you've got to grow in there first, through your learnings and experiences, bad and good.
yeah, good. Well, we were chatting just before starting recording, preparing for the video, and you've got quite a unique business model, which I'm going to come on to in a second. I think before I do that, I want to find out a bit more about the mentorship side of things, because I think the mentorship feeds in nicely to how your business is structured. So tell me at what point you decided you wanted to start mentoring other estate agents, and how that all came about.
It was probably only a year into, and this is me, classic me, I'm a year into, I've got a very good story going. I got approached by one of these membership organizations to say, do you want to use us? Do you want to be a part of this? And I'm not really, but I could tell you what I could do is I could coach your agents how to build an estate agent. And that was kind of like the beginning. So I employed or I JV'd with a coach, a business coach who I knew through my wife's background. And we set on a journey to try and mentor and coach other estate agents to build a business from day one rather than just a busy job. So I was like the guinea pig, really. Gigs & Co was the let me show you how I'm doing it so I can coach you to do the same. And it's a very, 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 very big shift. Being the business, being in the business, being the main person, and then building a team around you, and then being, entrusting somebody else to go out and do the valuations and so on and so forth. And that's something that just felt more natural for me to do, and then to teach other people, and then to help other agents who are perhaps slightly behind in certain areas around conversion rates or building relationships, training and skills, and so on and so forth. So that's where it really kicked in. And don't forget, for probably 10 years before that, I was training agents in a region that I looked after, where we had a number of successful offices, and we had a really great culture until it got entangled with managing loads of different brands. And that was kind of like the beginning of the end for me, where you're like, we're tailors and we're brilliant and we're great, and next thing you know, you got 2 or 3 other brands that you've got, and 2 other, completely mixing the messages up. And that's where it kind of lost me, I think. And building my own brand and building that confidence and that value in what we did was really simple, but I didn't know how necessarily to put that into like building blocks to necessarily help other people until coaching and mentoring kind of kicked into gear, and it started to make a bit of sense. So you start to, help other people to do the same thing. And that's where it began.
And I think anyone listening to this from a property investment as well as a estate agency background will have come from an arena where you're told to replace your income, leave your job, do property investing. And I think Matt's a really good advert for working within an industry and going as high as you can and learning how to train other people so that when you set up on your own, you're better prepared. I did it completely the opposite way. I just jumped out the ship and thought, how am I going to swim? And, I have a lot of respect for people who, in hindsight, if I'd known what I know now, I would have gone and worked for a letting agent for 10 years, mastered it, and then set my own business up instead of trying to figure it out as I went.
It's interesting you say that, Sam. For us, the whole point of our model growing probably in the years ahead more than, is to say to someone like a Sam, look, come and work with us, and for 2 years, you won't have to put any equity into this business that you'll be a partner in.
Yeah.
But we need you to work with us for 2 years. We'll build a plan for 2 years' time, and we'll help you to move into the location and to do what you do in that area, and it will become your business. And, I think it's very hard to know where to start if you haven't had that experience.
Yeah.
And it's very hard with the experience to give up where you are to go and make the start.
So you're almost creating that bridge for people.
Yeah, massively.
To take a massive leap. They've kind of always got that plan from day one. So if they want to set their own business up, they can, but with a structured blueprint.
And security. And people say, you've got to burn the bridge. And I get burning the bridge and the benefits of burning the bridge and everything else. And you're going to go and knock on every door that you can see and all that kind of stuff. But actually, in theory, I feel it's candidate driven, it's talent led. And what we want to do with that talent and mindset is to help them to come into our organization, be a part of it, feel the culture, feel the values, and see how they're going to build it for themselves rather than hope it's going to work out. We invest 100 grand in them in the first sort of year or so.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, it's burning down. It's too much of a risk for us and too much of a risk for them as well. So we try and remove all of the situations that I think are very prevalent in the reason why there's a high staff turnover in self-employed models, and perhaps why there's a reluctance for people that have got the ability, got the talent, got the leadership skills to go and build a business, because financially there's the gap between them doing it themselves but also recruiting the right number of people around them.
Cool. So before I go into the business model with Gigs & Co, tell me about the event, because it was a monster event. What was the idea behind that?
So, because you can see I love what I do, and we're still doing really, really well. And I'm conscious to say that because I'm quite competitive, but I also wanted to show other people that if you spin a estate agency on its head and do the opposite of what estate agencies or estate agents are perceived to be, if you do the opposite, so if you tell a client that actually it's the wrong time to sell the house, or if you, I'm just giving you wild examples, you say, look, I think you should use the other agent because it sounds to me like they're going to be more affordable. You know, if you go against the grain, you can create something special. So for me, it was about putting myself out there on a platform, finding a speaker like Karen Brady, making sure that we go out there to the market and show people that there's another way of doing estate agency that I felt had worked really, really well. And I just wanted to share. That's who I am. Never done an event before. You know, I remember sitting there, it was a September time, and I said, I'm going to do this. And I was with a lady called Sophie, and she said to me, well, what do we need to do? I said, well, we need to have a speaker who people know, because no one has a clue who I am. So, you know, you've got your LinkedIn following of 1,000 people or whatever it was at the time, but nobody really knew. And I wanted to kind of start putting something out there that was going to attract some attention. So that's what we did. I paid a lot of money to secure Karen as a guest speaker, and had to talk to her and get her agreement and everything else. That was good. And then I knew I had like 8 or 9 months to get it nailed. And it was like the scariest thing, because I'm running an estate agency, building the team, doing all of those things there. And I just thought, you know, put on 4 or 5 good speakers, yeah, you know, my story, ego, you know, that'll be all right. We'll get a lot of people there. And it was really hard to kind of get the traction going,
Yeah.
because people get bombarded with things and they get sold to all the time. And I just didn't want to be a nuisance like that, right? But yeah, I think we got to like 7 or 8 weeks out, and I think I've sold like a third of the tickets that I needed to sell.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember hiring a lady called Amber, who was fantastic as a project manager, and she just came in and helped me land things that I needed to land. And then I got a marketing guy in, and he helped me to do other things that I needed to do. And you're just pulling in the resources. And actually what I realized was, if I'd have realized a little bit sooner, it's the same as starting any business.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of people around you who know exactly what they're doing in their field, listen to them, get out of the way, and then you can move forward a lot faster together.
And I think what was really good about the event was it was at a time when purple bricks were really aggressively marketing, and a lot of estate agents were panicking and thinking, what do I do? So when you were saying before about sitting in a vendor's front room, you know, most of the conversations would probably be around, well, I'll do it for this price, or I'll do it for cheaper. And what you were saying was, you know what, go and use the other guy. And you almost use that sort of, here it is, but you can't have it approach to make them give you credibility.
Do you know what, Sam? I think the thing is, right, if when you ask, I was in the Ivy yesterday in London with an estate agency guy, and we caught up and having a chat, and there was a couple next to us, a mature couple, mid-70s they were. And they said to us, they overheard us talking about our industry. And we just got chatting to them, and they're going to be moving soon. They're in Essex. Anyway, next thing you know, we've asked them, what's the main reason why you would use an estate agent? What's the most important thing for you? And it comes back down to trust.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard to lose an instruction or a listing if you've won trust.
Yeah.
But winning trust is all about skills and beliefs and mindset. But most agents' belief of winning a listing back then, and still so now, is to be the cheapest or the highest in value.
Yeah.
It's not. If I came to spend some time with you and you were selling your property, and we discovered the needs that were really important to you together, and we had understood that there was a time frame that you wanted to work in, and then I could show you what we were going to do to get you there.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost you anything until we got you there.
Yeah.
You'd have been like, well, do you know what? Actually, yeah, it could be $1,000 for that person who's not even talked about this stuff.
Yeah.
Or actually $4,000, but this person's going to get me there, and I'll only pay them if they get me there. So there's no real risk. So it was totally about transforming the mindset of an agent, because there's no doubt estate agents' mindsets are the biggest challenge. They go out there in fear.
Yeah.
Instead of in focus. And if you actually say to someone, just go and lose it. If you need to lose it, but just do this one thing, and that's understand their needs and make sure that your solutions can deliver. You will still lose some, but you're going to win a hell of a lot more.
One of the things I always say to people is learn the difference between hearing and listening. And when someone says something to you, that's not what they're saying something else. And generally, when someone asks you a question, that's not the question they're trying to answer. So if
Yeah,
you can get to the root of what they're actually asking, and what's important to them, that's a great question, by the way. What is important to you?
yeah,
Because you get straight to the root of the problem, and you'll realize, and I see this in myself, the money side of things is so far removed now from being the most. It's a factor, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but it's not the most important thing in any decision I make. When I use a
Mhm.
solicitor, I don't want the cheapest one. I want the one that answers the phone and responds, for example.
Because
When I
that's
use a,
important to you. Because that's the thing. That's what you need. You want to be able to communicate. So that's a big deal.
because my time is important to me and valuable, so I want to make sure I'm not wasting it chasing other people. So to have a supplier that's reliable, that does what they say they're going to do, that will answer the phone, is worth a hell of a lot to me. And you'll only find that out by using good questioning techniques,
Yeah,
actively
100%.
listening to the answers, and taking it forward. So that's really, really good info there. So gigs group. Now the industry has changed a lot in the last few years. So typically you always had the corporate agents, the big boys, and then the smaller independents. And then along came the onliners who made a big noise and have kind of fallen by the wayside. And they're
Yep.
kind of seen as the cheap alternative now. And a new thing in the last few years has been more of like the Australian or American model of having self-employed estate agents. Now, from speaking to you, you've kind of almost taken the best bits of all of them and put it together with a very unique model. So
Yeah, well, I see some of these self-employed agents, and they're doing brilliantly, and they're under a banner, either EXP or wherever it is, Keller, or there's different ones out there. And I still believe that there's only a small percentage that really make it work. And I mean that respectfully to the models that we're talking about, because of the turnover will start to catch up in year 2, 3, 4, because doing it on your own for 2, 3, 4 years,
yeah,
it's not easy. It will be far harder than anything you've ever done. It will be far more rewarding. You will enjoy it. There will be things that you've got control over, time, etc., which will give you the lift that you need. But once the honeymoon period dies down, you're then still faced with some dilemmas. And it really is independently led. It's an individual situation. What I recognize is that there's really good estate agents that could become a business owner.
yeah,
And if they become a business owner, I can teach them how to be an investor slash entrepreneur, so they can start to make their net profits work for them in their businesses,
yeah,
rather than just literally pay themselves out of their net profits. They make super net profits in order to build cash in the business, in order to invest in property or other businesses. So I want to teach the guys that work with me as partners how to do what I've done, but actually under our model, so we can actually help add people into the group who can build future businesses with us, so they actually can have the lifestyle that I've created if they want it. They might not want it. Some people just want to prioritize listings, so then
yeah.
they need to prioritize marketing, relationships, and all the stuff that does. Some people want to prioritize building a great team and doing all of the team stuff and making sure the incentives and the rewards are all team related. And then some people want to build a business. And my advice to those people is find great people, hire them, put them into those places, train them, teach them, support them, empower them, and don't take crap, right? Don't take crap. What I mean by that is don't have people around you that don't have the same beliefs and values as you. They've got different opinions, definitely. You need different opinions, but you've got to have alignments. You've got to have those shared beliefs. So part of our group is bringing people in and helping them to build a business, so they've got something sustainable for the future.
Yeah, because it's like it's not a typical franchise model where people would just take on a territory. They actually, you have gigs and Watterson, for example, or gigs
Yeah.
and Coonan, so they get their own business, and it's almost like a partnership.
Yeah,
So I think,
it is. It's totally that. And what we're doing now is that partnership will probably become 3 or 4 ways. So actually, some of the partners that are 3, 4, 5 years in that I've got that have done the first part of the journey, they've got a team. They can now mentor someone else from a closer first-hand experience, probably a lot closer than mine, right? And that becomes part of their business. And actually, they've then got myself, they've got Sam, another partner, they've got Gemma, they've got the group support in terms of HR, operations, training, development. They've got the investment to be able to recruit. So they've also got the skills, the bit that I was referring to 5-10 minutes ago about how to teach agents to be better agents. So for me, it's about giving people the opportunity to build an estate agency business, because whilst estate agency is great, and it really is rewarding. There is no doubt about it. It's freaking hard work. And if you're not careful, you can lose sight of all of the other wonderful things in life if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Families, friendships, holidays, all of the stuff that actually fills your cup up in between the moments in which you're working. So we want to give people that are right, which are probably a bit like unicorns, the opportunity to come and work with us and do that and build it and be a part of it. So yeah.
So how do you think the industry has evolved in the last few years, and kind of where do you think it's heading?
I think it's evolved brilliantly for options. It's given people way more confidence to see that they can go and build something without spending a fortune. You know, they could go on their own and potentially do all of that hard work and pay very little back to an umbrella organization and build equity in some ways in those places. Then there's, I think, companies, and hopefully we're one of them, that I've really began to, probably from the Purple Bricks era, right? You got to learn from threats like that in the market.
Yeah.
You got to think about, okay, you know, what have we got to be better than these other companies? And that's about really understanding the stuff that makes a culture work, building teams so we don't have individual commission, you know, actually having the right people in your organization, attracting them, recruiting them, developing them, and then giving them the no glass ceiling for where they want to go. So I think the people coming into agencies should be way more excited than ever, because it's not just about what we offer, it's about the amount of opportunities that are out there in the market. There's so many good opportunities, but again, there's a very, very, very small pool of people that will be really serious contenders about making those things a reality, because it's relentless, it's hard work, it's challenging, it's self-fulfilling, and it's, you know, if I'm honest, it takes guts. And you know, we're in a bit of a world at the moment which is probably teaching you to celebrate very little in terms of you know, resilience. You know, we need to build resilience, not take away resilience from people, because life kicks you in the teeth, kicks you when you're down. And actually being in a business teaches you all of those things. You know, there's so many things that I could share, maybe on another day, that will teach people that actually, even though it's hard at times, it layers you with stuff that you wouldn't have got unless you went and got involved from the off.
Toughens you up, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that I'm really keen on, and I spend a lot of time developing in my business, is technology. Whether that just be standard technology or prop tech, which for anyone who doesn't know is technology that's designed specifically for property companies, typically estate agents. So have you started integrating prop tech in your business, and what are your thoughts on it as a tool? Is it, you know, making life easier, and is it useful?
Yeah, and here's one of the challenges, is the amount of distractions that we get as business owners about, because everything sounds great, doesn't it, in theory? And when you're a salesperson, you're fairly easy to sell to as well. So you think that, you know, hop around, I'm going to use that, and then you don't implement that properly, and you end up running around like a headless chicken. We introduced Lifecycle into Gigs & Co in September last year, Lifecycle 2. And we replaced our CRM, much to the probably going against every opinion, you know. But my reason for doing it was that the CRMs that I've seen and that we've had hold data and does nothing with it. And for me, it was a case of, right, I wanted to make sure that we had a platform that gave customers a far better service, so their journey was mapped out, that they can dictate their searches and they understood their needs would be matched to the criteria. And the life cycle model came in for me, and we've implemented it across our group, and it's been a really, really good transformation. We wouldn't have done it if we had to have a CRM by its side, because we knew if you had those two things, you're giving your staff in the offices the opportunity to sit between the two, and actually, we had to commit to it. So that was the only way.
You got rid of your CRM system then?
Yeah, we did, and
To be
all our
fair,
data's in there. So
the estate agency CRMs, I think, are so, they're just awful. Like the one we use is great in terms of the property management, processing the tenants' rent, storing all the tenants' information on like renewing the gas safe certificates. But other than that, I've built my own systems outside of the property world because I want it to be customizable and I can bolt on different apps and different things.
yeah,
So I use HubSpot and I've actually created quite a good network of technology that kind of does the things that I want to do.
yeah,
Um, and I just find it makes life so much simpler. And the legacy systems, I call them, they just don't give you enough control and there's not enough development. And I think there'll be a massive shift away from the fact that we have ours that's cloud based, these clunky servers that sit in the corner of the office that you can't access on your mobile, that only work on Windows. It's just a really outdated way of thinking. And
we totally. I think the thing is, there are some really good web. There are bound, and we looked at some, and some really good. But there was things that it didn't deliver, and there's things that made probably sense for other businesses, but not for ours. And you've got to understand the strengths of your business, and then attach things to that rather than dilute the strengths. And I think for us, it was a case of, we want customers to come to us. Yes, we want to retain them as a customer, but we want to give them what they need. So if we're not contacting them after they registered with us 4 weeks ago,
yeah,
that's a bit pointless. So if there's no advice going their way from our brand, and there's no guidance, and there's no solutions, and so on and so forth, then we're actually not delivering part of our vision.
yes,
So we needed something to do that, and this simple system has allowed us to do that. I must say, I've got two people in our organisation that have helped us to implement that, and they're extremely good in the technical side.
yeah,
And I think if you were going to onboard something like this, you'd need to make sure that your best person at doing so would
yeah,
be the one to implement it. But that sounds obvious. But what you end up doing is, a bunch of estate agents there's a brand that we're going to be merging with shortly, and the guy in there and his team have had it running alongside their CRM,
right.
and it's just a disaster. And
A lot of crossover.
yeah, no, they're not really using it to its full effect. So they've got two things,
Yeah,
neither are being invested in,
yeah,
and it becomes pointless. And I just feel that if you're going to do something, do it really well before you start adding other stuff in. I think it's really important not to try and do too many things at once in these businesses.
you made a great point there because one of the comments or criticisms I would have of people in our industry is they'd have a CRM system and they're not using it.
Yeah, 100%. So you use that one if that's
Yeah,
what you think you got it for
use
in the
it ten
first place.
percent, ten
Yeah,
percent of what it does, and they've
yeah.
never really worked out how to use the rest of it. They're
Yeah,
still,
well, that's exactly it, Sam. So we were like, look, we want to make sure customers get this service,
yeah,
and this will deliver that. But the shortcomings on the fact that it's not an actual CRM mean we're going to need to understand the bits that we need to do. And, it made sense for us. It might not make sense for everybody, but you're right. If you've got a CRM, I bet you're not using it.
yeah. And I come from a technology background. I did a business and IT degree,
Yeah,
so when I got sat in front of our CRM system, I just pressed buttons and went exploring and went, what does that do? What does this do? And I almost kind of reverse engineered it and then built it back up again.
yeah,
And
brilliant.
I see so many people who just don't use it to its full potential. So there's a message out there, agency folk, use your CRM system to make your life easier. We're getting close to the end of the interview, Matt.
Yeah,
And one thing I wanted to ask you, if there's anybody out there who's thinking of starting their own agency or starting their own business,
yeah,
what tips would you give them to help them get started?
yeah. I think that's a good question. I play golf. I'm just about to go and play golf in a minute. When I go out on the course and I just start swinging and going around and bashing around and everything else, it ends up being a pretty crap round. When I go out there and think, right, okay, what do I want to achieve today? Well, I want to get my driving straight, or I want to achieve 45 on the front nine, or whatever it is, and start to work my way back from the result into my grip, my stance, my swing, focusing on the things that can help me to get to that point score on the hole. Focus on each shot rather than the hole, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
When you go in with a mindset and a strategy and a vision, it makes a big difference. So many people are starting businesses because they want to make money. Make sure your business has an impact,
Yeah.
something that you believe in. So whether it's a community-run business, and the person that springs to mind, Andy Overman, for argument's sake, he's a community man. You know, he's in his community. It was one of the things that I felt privileged to be able to do, was to support charities, football teams, cricket teams when we opened, because I'd never thought I'd be able to do that. So I'm really proud to be able to do it, you know, but
Yeah.
have a vision for your business. Ours was to be the best community agent and to make sure that we were the one that delivered the results for the customers in a really clear sense of the word. And, you know, most people are going, I want to be the most chosen agent, or I want to earn £100,000, whatever it is. Look, you've got to have an impact and a vision to your business, if it's something that you believe in, because it's going to get hard. Might not be that hard in year one. You might actually be okay in year two, but when you get to year 3, 4, 5, and the novelty wears off,
Yeah.
you need something that's exciting. And if that vision's been achieved, start a new one. More often than not, visions aren't always attainable as such. They're aspirational. So make sure you got that before you kick off.
Brilliant. Some great advice there. So, Matt, if people are interested in speaking to you about some mentorship for their estate agency, or there's any self-employed estate agents out there who'd be interested in the Gigs & Co model, how can people get hold of you?
Yeah, just send me an email, matt.gigs@thegigsgroup.com. And you'll find me on LinkedIn if you haven't followed me already, or there's a Facebook group called the Personal Power Group where I just put quotes and bits and pieces in. But yeah, get in touch. I think they'll probably get to a time where I do think, Sam, we'll end up having to probably speak to probably 100 agents to find the next partner, if you like. That's not sounding a bit, but it's in reverse of perhaps some of the other things that are out there, where it's really essential that we find the right person to build their career and their business with. And if that's someone who thinks they like the sound of it, definitely get in touch.
Definitely. So this interview will be going out on YouTube, and it'll also be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you are listening to the podcast, check out the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, check out the podcast. Matt, if you could send me your links on Messenger, I'll add that to the comments so people can get through to you. Just want to say thanks for coming on. Really good interview. You're a really good guy. Buzzing that you've made time for me today.
Thanks,
Looking
mate.
forward to getting this one launched before the bank holiday weekend. So if you've got anything more to add.
No, do you know what? I appreciate you doing what you're doing, mate. And thanks for asking me on. Good luck with it. And keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like it's making some real inroads as well. So good luck to you.
And if you're enjoying the podcast, please send me some feedback. If you've got any suggestions or any comments, get in touch. Let me know what you'd like to see, or any questions you want me to answer, or people you think I should interview. And if you can, give me a subscribe, give me a like, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Evolution of a Property Business podcast.
See you later.